Some sequels exist to repeat success. Others exist because someone had the nerve to ask, what if we push this further, without breaking what worked? These are sequels that don't just cash in on a title. They understand the tone, the characters, and the rules, then bend them just enough to feel exciting again. Sometimes they go bigger, sometimes stranger, sometimes darker, funnier, or more self-aware. But they never feel unnecessary. From supernatural escalation to stylistic reinvention, these films prove that following a classic doesn't mean playing it safe. In some cases, the sequel becomes the version people remember most. This is sequels that are equals. Films that didn't replace the original, but stood right beside it. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, 1986. Tommy Jarvis just wants closure. Years after killing Jason, he digs up the grave to cremate the body and silence his nightmares. One lightning bolt later, a metal pole through the corpse's chest turns intention into resurrection, and Jason rises as an unstoppable undead force. Now truly immortal, the masked killer marches on Camp Forest Green, the rebranded Crystal Lake, now full of happy campers and paintball-playing counselors. Writer-director Tom McLoughlin injects deliberate horror comedy, a James Bond-style gun barrel opening, fourth-wall-breaking narration, characters quoting horror rules like they've seen the earlier movies. Tom Matthews plays a weary, determined Tommy, while Jennifer Cook's tough final girl Megan, daughter of the disbelieving sheriff, adds sparks and authority clashes. Practical effects deliver franchise highs. Triple decapitations, smiley-face bottle smashes, hearts ripped out mid-punch. Jason moves with supernatural menace, teleporting speed, super strength, zero need for subtlety. Jason Lives didn't just bring the monster back, it made him fun again. After Part 5's stumble, McLaughlin's self-aware blend of brutal kills and knowing humor revitalized the series, proving Jason works best when the filmmakers wink at the absurdity while still swinging the machete hard. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, 1987. The last survivors of Elm Street are locked away in Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital, diagnosed as disturbed, drugged to stay awake. But the dreams still come, and so does Freddy. Nancy Thompson returns, now older and wiser, to guide a new group of teens who discover they can fight back in the dream world, harnessing powers drawn from their deepest selves. Together, they become the Dream Warriors. Director Chuck Russell unleashes the franchise's full imagination. Acrobatic flips, slicing through nightmares. Wizard spells clashing with razor gloves. A primetime TV execution that shocks and delights. Patricia Arquette leads a vivid ensemble, each teen given distinct flair and heartbreaking vulnerability, while Robert Englund's Freddy sharpens into the gleefully cruel showman fans adore. Elaborate set pieces, inventive kills, and a richer backstory elevate the horror into spectacle. Practical effects and dream logic reach bold new heights, blending terror with adolescent empowerment. Dream Warriors stands as the series' creative peak, where Freddy became a true icon, the mythology deepened, and the nightmares felt thrillingly alive. For many, it remains the definitive Elm Street chapter. Bigger, darker, and unforgettably fun. Child's Play 2, 1990. Andy Barclay, still haunted by Chucky's rampage, is placed in foster care with the Simpsons and rebellious teen sister Kyle. But at the Play Pals factory, technicians rebuild the scorched good guy doll. Big mistake. Electricity surges. Eyes glow red. Chucky lives again, and he's coming for Andy to finish the soul transfer once and for all. Director John LaFaya ramps up the chaos, trading suburban stealth for full-throttle action and bigger set pieces. Brad Dourif's voice work sharpens Chucky into a gleefully vicious wisecracker, every insult laced with murder. Alex Vincent returns as the traumatized yet resilient Andy. Christina Leese brings tough-edged heart as Kyle, his eventual believer and ally, while the foster parents' denial cranks up the isolation once more. Practical effects and animatronics reach new heights. Chucky scaling walls, dodging machinery, wielding tools with demonic precision. The climactic Toy Factory showdown explodes with conveyor belt chases, molten plastic torment, and one gloriously gruesome meltdown. Child's Play 2 proves evil doesn't stay buried. It gets rebuilt, meaner and funnier than ever, cementing Chucky as the unstoppable, pint-sized king of slasher villains. Evil Dead 2, 1987. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2 is one of the rare sequels that completely reinvents the original, while staying true to its chaotic spirit. Instead of simply continuing the first film's story, Raimi uses the setup as a springboard for something far more inventive, a delirious mix of horror, comedy, and raw creativity that feels like it's sprinting from start to finish. Ash Williams returns to the infamous cabin, but this time the nightmare is even more unhinged. Demonic forces twist reality itself, turning the film into a non-stop barrage of flying cameras, splattering blood, and cartoonish violence. Bruce Campbell throws himself into the role with wild physicality, selling every scream, grimace, and one-liner with the energy of a man possessed. What makes Evil Dead 2 stand out isn't just its blend of tones, but how confident it feels in its madness. Raimi embraces low-budget ingenuity and turns it into a style. Every shot, every gag, every grotesque effect becomes part of the movie's rhythm. It's relentless, funny, and genuinely unsettling all at once. More than a sequel, Evil Dead 2 became a benchmark for creative horror filmmaking, proof that a director's imagination could turn even the simplest premise into something unforgettable. It didn't just expand a cult classic. It redefined how wild and expressive horror could be when rules went out the window. Phantasm 2, 1988. Phantasm 2 picks up the nightmarish, surreal world established in Don Coscarelli's 1979 cult classic. Released in 1988, this sequel follows Mike, played by James LeGros, as he continues his battle against the terrifying tall man, portrayed by Angus Scrimm. Years after his traumatic encounters, Mike is still haunted by memories of the sinister mortician and his deadly minions. The story begins with Mike escaping from a mental institution, determined to stop the tall man once and for all. He reunites with Reggie, the loyal ice cream vendor played by Reggie Bannister, who has been drawn back into the chaos despite his own fears. Together they embark on a mission to confront the tall man and save Liz, Mike's love interest, who has become a target in the villain's twisted schemes. What sets Phantasm 2 apart is its seamless blend of horror, fantasy, and science fiction. The film expands the mythology of the tall man while maintaining the surreal, dreamlike atmosphere that made the original so distinctive. Practical effects, inventive camera work, and imaginative creature design keep viewers on edge, creating a sense of dread that is both visceral and uncanny. The tall man remains a figure of pure menace, embodying the fear of death and the unknown. Angus Scrimm's performance adds a chilling gravitas to the role, making him one of horror's most enduring villains. The film also explores themes of loss, trauma, and the struggle to confront evil, giving the narrative an emotional weight beneath the fantastical horror. Fans of the series will remember the flying spheres, the tall man's signature weapons, which return with even more creative and lethal designs. These sequences, combined with a tense and atmospheric score, enhance the suspense and highlight the film's unique visual style. Although opinions were mixed when it first hit theaters, Phantasm 2 has earned a devoted following over the years. Its surreal horror, inventive storytelling, and memorable performances make it more than just a typical sequel. It's an essential chapter in the Phantasm saga. By the end, the film leaves viewers with that lingering sense of unease and wonder, a reminder that the tall man's shadow looms large, and in this world nothing is ever as it seems. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, 1988. Hellraiser's sequel plunges deeper into the nightmarish world introduced in Clive Barker's original, expanding the dark mythology of the Cenobites. Directed by Tony Randall, it follows Kirsty Cotton, played by Ashley Lawrence, who awakens in a psychiatric hospital still haunted by her encounter with Pinhead. The true danger comes in the form of Dr. Channard, portrayed by Kenneth Cranham. Obsessed with the lament configuration, he resurrects the skinless Julia and unleashes hellish forces that draw Kirsty back into the Cenobite's labyrinthine realm. Doug Bradley returns as Pinhead, delivering a commanding performance that deepens the character's menace and cements his status as a horror icon. The Cenobites themselves are explored further, revealing the terrifying rules governing their world and the blurred line between pleasure and pain. Visually, the film is striking, featuring grotesque practical effects, surreal makeup, and unforgettable set designs. From the sterile, eerie corridors of the psychiatric hospital to the twisted, hellish landscapes of the other dimension. Kirsty's resourcefulness and courage anchor the story, blending psychological terror, suspense, and visceral horror in a way that keeps viewers invested. Though initially met with mixed reviews, the film has become a cult classic, celebrated for its ambitious world-building and enduring contribution to the Cenobites' terrifying legacy. The Exorcist III, 1990. The Exorcist III is one of the most surprising sequels in horror history, a film that ignores the excess of Exorcist II and instead returns to the psychological dread and theological weight of the original, but through an entirely new lens. Written and directed by William Peter Blatty, the author of The Exorcist, this entry trades spectacle for atmosphere, crafting a slow, unnerving descent into faith, doubt, and evil that feels more like a detective story than a possession film. The story follows Lieutenant Kinderman, reprised by George C. Scott, as he investigates a string of brutal murders linked to a killer long thought dead, and to events that should be impossible. As his search leads him back to a psychiatric ward, the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural begin to collapse, culminating in one of the most haunting third acts of the decade. Blatty builds his horror through dialogue, silence, and dread instead of cheap scares. The film's pacing is deliberate, almost meditative, allowing every unsettling moment to breathe. When it does strike, it hits hard, including one of the most famous jump scares in horror history, executed with masterful precision. The Exorcist III isn't just a course correction for the franchise, it's a rare example of a sequel that dares to be introspective. It explores guilt, redemption, and the quiet persistence of evil with a sense of intelligence and restraint that make it as haunting today as it was in 1990. Proof that horror can still unsettle the soul without ever raising its voice. Psycho 2, 1983. The audacity of Psycho 2 is undeniable. Making a sequel to Hitchcock's Psycho more than 2 decades later should have been a disaster. Yet director Richard Franklin, a Hitchcock protege, delivers a continuation that respects the original while forging its own identity. Rather than chasing shock, the film becomes a quiet, unnerving study of manipulation, memory, and institutional failure. Anthony Perkins returns as Norman Bates, released from psychiatric care and attempting a fragile version of normal life. Tom Holland's script cleverly weaponizes audience expectation. We know Norman's history, so when murders begin again, suspicion feels inevitable. The tension lies in uncertainty. Is Norman relapsing, or is someone deliberately pushing him back toward madness? Perkins plays both possibilities with haunting restraint, making Norman oddly sympathetic and deeply unsettling. Vera Miles returns as Lila Loomis, now driven by obsession, while Meg Tilly brings warmth and ambiguity as a drifter who befriends Norman. Franklin films the Bates house and motel with reverence, treating them as haunted American landmarks. Supported by Jerry Goldsmith's restrained score, Psycho 2 becomes something rare, a sequel that earns its existence by asking whether redemption is possible, and whether society ever truly allows. Aliens, 1986. James Cameron didn't replace the horror of Alien. He expanded it. Where Ridley Scott trapped terror in dark corridors, Aliens drops a heavily armed unit into a nightmare that doesn't care about weapons, rank, or preparation. Motion trackers ping in the dark, overconfidence collapses into panic, and survival becomes a losing battle against something ancient, organized, and relentless. The film's subtext echoes Vietnam. corporate indifference, expendable soldiers, and command failure. But the fear always comes first. Sigourney Weaver delivers one of the most defining performances in genre cinema, earning a rare Best Actress Oscar nomination. Ripley isn't an action hero. She's a survivor dragged back into trauma, now driven by maternal instinct, sharpened into absolute resolve. The supporting cast gives the film its human stakes. Bill Paxton's unraveling Hudson, Michael Biehn's steady Hicks, and Lance Henriksen's quietly unsettling Bishop form a unit the audience invests in before Cameron methodically dismantles it. Stan Winston's practical effects remain astonishing, from the xenomorphs to the towering alien queen, and the power loader confrontation reframes motherhood as ferocity rather than vulnerability. Aliens didn't dilute the horror. It restructured it, proving escalation doesn't have to mean betrayal. It's not just one of the greatest sequels ever made. It's foundational. Gremlins 2: The New Batch, 1990. The New Batch traps its creatures inside a glossy corporate skyscraper modeled after Trump Tower and turns the entire film into a cartoonish attack on media empires, consumer culture, and sequel logic itself. Warner Brothers wanted a repeat hit. Dante delivered a satirical meltdown that openly mocks the idea of franchise obligation. Set inside a multimedia conglomerate run by John Glover's gleefully excessive tycoon, the film lets the Gremlins mutate into walking punchlines and ideas. One becomes hyper-intelligent, another embodies unchecked desire, another literally turns into electricity. Dante skewers genetic engineering, cable news, film criticism, and even the movie's own existence, turning the building into a pressure cooker of late capitalist absurdity. The cameos shouldn't work. Leonard Maltin reviewing the first film before being attacked, Hulk Hogan breaking the fourth wall when the projection fails. But they do, because Dante commits completely. Rick Baker's creature effects are more expressive than ever, grounding the madness in practical artistry. Audiences expecting comfort food rejected it at the time, but decades later Gremlins 2 plays like prophecy. A smart building full of fools, media overload, and chaos as the only honest response. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.